Good day all. Today, on a follow-up program on our Marine Quiz Solutions, we have two legend pilots. One is an ace ex-Air Force pilot by the name of Wing Commander Abhijit Gokhale Saab. The other is Captain Rohit Kumar. At present, uh, Abhi Saab, Vinko Abhi Saab, has been also involved in the aviation industry after he switched over from the Air Force. And Captain Rohit Saab, he has been also a legend in his own industry from the aviation perspective. And not only has he been flying with X number of hours, with 15,000 plus flying hours in the aviation, but he's also been carrying out the training of lots of pilots in a reputed airline. The idea is to bring all three of us from the podium. From my perspective, I've been a mariner, so a mariner, an Air Force pilot, and aviation legend, to bring all of us together on a common podium and talk about the challenges what we have been facing. So it is like a mutual consent. With mutual consent, it will be a talk and a friendly chat to understand each other's not only the legacy but also try to understand the hiccups, the challenges, what they have been going through in their own industry, and that will be coming from the horse's mouth. In other words, bringing that Air Force fighter pilot who has converted into the airline industry, and in a conglomerate along with myself being a mariner and a shipping navigator. Basically, all three of us are navigators, and basically we are on a converging course, but still drawing a parallels amongst three of us. I welcome to
Absolutely.
you, Wing Commander Abhijit Gokhale, sir. Good
Thank you, sir.
evening. Jain, sir.
Jai
Captain
Hind.
Roy, sir. Good evening.
Good
Jain,
evening.
sir.
Jai Hind.
So, I would request uh, Abhi Sahab to take the podium platform and tell us about himself. Abhi Sahab, please go ahead.
Okay, Jai Hind, at the outset, thank you once again for taking the
Jain, sir.
risk of getting on the show with you. I hope your
Arey,
reputation does
sir,
not
it's been
suffer as
a
a result of
pleasure.
this.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure that you gave us some time to come on our show.
No,
Certainly, you have been a legend not only in the industry, but you have been into the media.
no,
You
no,
have been into everywhere, and you are quite a renowned personality, be
so
it
it's all
from the
like I
film
keep saying.
industry, Tejas,
No.
etc., sir.
So I always say, no, कि beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder.
Yes, sir.
So putting that aside, okay. So I'm Wing Commander Abhijit Gokhale. I joined the National Defense Academy in 1988. Then has worn the uniform for 27 years, and I left in 2015. During this period, I have flown. Basically, I am from the fighters, so I flew a variety of fighters. And I was an instructor. I became a qualified flying instructor in 1998, and trained lots of youngsters. So I can say successfully that maybe during the course of my instructional tenure, I must have produced about at least five squadrons of fighter pilots in the Air Force. And
Wow.
some of
Great,
whom
sir.
are, of course,
Great.
now
Wow.
gone on to become
Commendable.
commanders of Air Force stations and so on and so forth. And then for 3 years, I flew for Government of Maharashtra, where I flew the Chief Minister and the Governor. And then 2015, when I realized that there was no more flying for me in the Air Force, and I'm an outdoor person, so I applied for release, got my release, flew the Embraer for a corporate. And then after 4 years, I switched over and I'm flying the Airbus 320 since then. So that's as far my flying career goes. Otherwise, I'm interested in a huge number of activities. A completely outdoor person. I mean, even this session, 1 hour is going to be difficult for me to keep stationary. You'll find me moving all the time. So, and
Great,
I'll
sir.
just tell you one thing. The
Yes,
worst
sir.
flight that I've flown is Mumbai to Guwahati, 3.5 hours. I don't know how to keep stable. So once I'm in cruise, the moment the autopilot comes on, I tell him I need to use the lab. So I go out and then I'm using the lab every half an hour because I can't sit still.
Why? Because of the turbulence or something, sir?
No, I can't sit in one place. I'm a complete hyperactive outdoor person. So that I feel I'm jailed inside that chota sa cockpit.
And Embraer, when you talk about, allow me to ask you, Embraer is also now part of the AVAX, if I'm not mistaken, sir.
That's correct. The Embraer is basically a Brazilian aircraft, and it has
I'm
been
aware
used
of it.
in
Yes, sir.
it's
Yes,
a
sir.
huge number of roles. It has been used in electronic warfare, VIP flying, and you name it, even short haul, long haul. It's not various. There are about 7 varieties of the Embraer. And the funny part is the OEM issued a technical instruction saying that you do a 2-hour ground course and 1 hour simulator, you can fly all 7 varieties. So there were days I would fly for a company, the Embraer 135, then go next day, fly a 145, then fly a 145 XR, then 145 ER, and all layouts were different. Some had electronic instruments, some had some manual gauges. So it was all over.
So,
But then,
so have you also piloted the Embraer AWACS also, sir?
no, not in the Air Force. The Embraer I flew after I left the Air Force.
Okay, in the commercial,
Commercially.
in the commercial.
Purely commercial.
Understood. So, Vinko Abhisab, would you like to share your experience for your youngsters, for our viewers, the challenges, what you had faced whilst you were in the Air Force? Of course, we all salute with the decorum what you have had, or our forces have, and we salute them. It's all because of them we are still sitting here, and I salute them from my heart and soul. Would you like to tell us something about, something which you think is can be talked about from your Air Force time, sir?
Yeah, sure. So the challenge that we face in the Air Force, the basic challenge is, unlike in civil aviation, Air Force has a very limited, time-limited structured training, right? Because every sortie that you fly is taxpayers' money. So,
Right, sir.
for example, in a training stage, like if I was checking out a cadet, his 8th sortie is his solo check, right? And we never had simulators in those days, so we never could practice on a simulator. We're straight into the aircraft. The first is a sector recce, then some aerobatics, and then a bit of handling, and then circuit and landing. So the 8th is a solo check, right? If you don't clear the solo check, you get 2 additional sorties. You get a repeat solo check. If that repeat solo check is okay, but you're not fit enough to go solo, you will get 2 more sorties. And if you don't clear solo, you go home. There is no more extra chances, right? The challenge here is because you never had a simulator, the guy could never practice. You could never see his performance on the ground. So what we had to do was you had to take him to an aircraft. You had to tell him to practice on a chart, the layout, which Puneet sir and you would also, Rohit sir would also know.
Yes,
You
yes,
have a
yes.
layout of the aircraft, you'd sit and do chair
Absolutely.
flying. And then we would put him in a cockpit, put a blindfold, and then ask him questions. And he had to point out operate switches because there was no simulator. That's why a lot of groundings used to take place earlier. So, like when I got commissioned, we were 110 or 115 who joined aviation, but we passed out 69. The rest were grounded. Not because they couldn't fly, but because they couldn't reach the required standards in that much time.
Hmm.
That is the biggest challenge. Whereas in the civil
Correct.
world, you can fly more. Say 30,000 rupees an hour, you have money, you fly another 2 hours and you can still learn, right? And the other challenge is because of the variety of exercises. Like once I do my solo, 2 more solos, then I get into close formation where I'm formating with aircraft, which are wingtip to wingtip. Then you go on to tactical, then you go on to low level, then you go on to bombing, combat, aerobatics, advanced aerobatics. So it's a continuous change and you have to learn it within 6 months. And you change an aircraft every 6 months for about 1.5 years and you have to perform in each of these. So 3 solo checks every 6 months. Anywhere you fail, you get grounded.
Any
That
of the
is the challenge.
combat, any of your, distinctive or your memory, the combat operation you'd like to talk about
Okay, so basically
in
what happened
particular?
is, yeah, so combat. Now, every fighter squadron will have a fresh guy coming in, like even in an airline. He is a license holder, or maybe he's flown a 737 also for 10 years, but when he comes to the Airbus 320, he's absolutely fresh, and vice
Correct.
versa. When you come to a new aircraft, you have to leave everything behind because the problem with an experienced person is to unlearn and relearn. Your
Correct.
hands will go to where you are used to, and it may be completely drastically disastrous, right? So it's easy to train a fresh guy. So when a fresh guy comes to a fighter's con, you have to build him up. And combat training is one of the first things because finally, what is it in the Air Force? Keep yourself safe, come back alive, and shoot down the enemy. So every day in a fighter squadron, you will fly at least 2 combat missions. You will brief for them, fly the combat mission, come back, debrief and learn. And every combat mission, even in training, is as risky as in actual. The only difference is somebody is not firing an actual missile at you, but you are whizzing past each other within about 200 meters of each other at about 900,000 kilometers per hour. And it is not just two aircraft, there were 6, 7. You have to keep contact of mental awareness of each one.
So when you have a
That is the basic
formation
challenge.
of the aircraft, sir, like what we see on 26th January, lots of 2, 3 aircraft
Correct.
they fly. Like in our case, we have a hydrodynamics. You must be having
Yeah,
aerodynamics. So is there something the turbulence created by another aircraft
definitely.
coming in the close
So,
proximity, sir?
like sir would also know,
Because you
laws of
guys fly
aerodynamics.
on a fighter aircraft, you fly at the speed of Mach, 1 Mach, 2 Mach, whatever it is.
Right, correct. But like sir would also know, this is called aerodynamics. So for example, let us assume like there is an aircraft flying with the wings in the center. The wingtip, there is air pressure, there are vortices, right?
Correct.
The faster you fly, the larger the vertex. Now, when you're
Correct, sir.
formating with each other, you need to stay. There are two vertices now. Okay, you have to stay away from each of them. If you break each one wing will drop, you will roll into him. And now you're doing aerobatics, loops, barrel rolls. So how you do it is
Vertical
at that
Charlie, what
time,
I remember from a few of the things.
correct. So
Vertical
that's a
Charlie.
singer. Right. So the issue is when you're doing this aerobatic maneuver, you're not looking inside because you're formatting, say, about just 10 feet from the other guy. So you're only looking at him, you're flying and hoping like hell that he's doing the correct thing. Because if he goes into the ground, you will go into the ground.
I understand. Quite a
And
precise
and the challenge
precision
is
and
primarily
risky
flying at
operations.
ultra low level. Like when we fly, say if you're going to the range and dropping a bomb, you're flying at 50 meters above ground. You're not only flying 50 meters above ground, but you're also putting on the side, putting on the switches, locating the target, tracking, and then firing the button. There's a lot of inside work where you have to look inside, but at the same time, you're supposed to be aware what's going around. Because you're flying really, really low.
So you must have done quite a bit of precision targeting or with munition, etc., sir.
So, yeah, so precision targeting is something that came into the Indian Air Force much later, late 90s. Precision guided munitions, as they call it. Till then, there was no precision guided munitions. It was all pilot skill, right? Like even in civil aviation or in your case, earlier, everything depended on how the guy who's detecting the sonar, blips, etc. Everything was there, or the navigation by charts, right? His navigation was most critical. Today, you have got GPS and so on and so forth. Earlier, everything was manual flying. Like if I'm dropping a bomb from 2.5 kilometers of height, I needed to know the winds at 1.5 and 100 meters because once the bomb goes, he's being affected by winds. So I had to calculate. So if let us say that this is the target where I have to hit the bomb, and if I'm firing from top, I needed to know the winds. If I kept the target here, if the pipper and fired, the bomb would go to the left if the winds are from the right. So I had to lay off to the right.
So
So that
obviously
much
you counteract for the wind which is coming on port or starboard, whatever it is. I
absolutely
understand, sir.
exactly.
So the calculation is based upon your experience, or you have some calculator in mind, or you have some other modus
Yeah.
operandi, sir?
So what will happen is when you go for the mission, you get advanced information of the winds and the targets, and there is also called weapon to target matching. For a specific target, you can use only one weapon, right? For example, if you're going to use a rocket for a bunker, correct. But if you're going to use guns for a bunker, no effect. And then each weapon has got its own characteristics and is affected by the winds in a different way. So before going, you get to know, you plan, and you know how much error is going to be there. But like is in aviation and in, in sea navigation, what is predicted and forecast is never actually what you experience. It will always change. So even after you get airborne, even if the target is only 30 minutes away, the fog could change. The fog could become mist or the mist could become fog. Similarly with the
I believe
winds.
that's the reason it's nomenclatured as forecast, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's why it's a
So,
forecast.
correct.
Forecast. Captain Rohit, would you like to tell us about this? What Captain Vinko has talked about, Vinko Abhijit Saab. How do you correlate, Vinko Saab? Would you like to, liaise with Captain Rohit? And let me hear this because I'm really very inquisitive and very excited to know about it, sir. Captain Rohit, over to you, sir.
So, in civil aviation, I mean, it's not as exciting the way uh, Vinko Abhijit is, his background and his history and how things go. But yes, we do have this solo, which is, I think it's a solo is a big thing for any pilot, whether you're in a civil aviation or Air Force. That first solo is what you look for, and I think that's a point of memory that is engraved in you forever for life. That is
Absolutely.
right, and the earlier it happens, the better. That's the level of confidence that you build. And I'm it's really amazing that even y'all use this concept of what we call as chair flying, you know,
Absolutely.
because that's the cheapest method and the easiest method
Absolutely.
that is available. So what he was talking about, Captain Puneet, is it's called as the chair flying, and you have the whole layout of the cockpit in your room, at home or at your flying school, and you go and keep on practicing that on those switches, this, that, and all that, and you practice the maneuver in your mind, and then you use those switches, and you constantly in your mind is simulating the whole scene, and the more you do it, it's easier in the airplane because in the airplane it's moving, things are moving, and things are moving very fast, and if you're thinking over there, what am I going to do next? You've already crossed that point, right? So this is an amazing concept that I think aviation and many other fields. I don't know about race cars whether they do this kind of things. It can be used as a concept with other fields as well. It's it's a brilliant, cheapest method available, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
So, yes,
yeah.
sir, please go ahead.
Just
Yes, go
one
ahead, please.
question, Vinko Abhijit. Sorry, I'll keep calling you
No, no,
like
that's
that. And
okay. You can,
or Abhi, you said
yeah.
what? How did you find a transition from that Air Force where you're the single pilot, but then again when you form flying formation, you're not really single pilot. You're about
Absolutely.
5 to 7 people, and everybody's decision matters. Whatever they are doing,
Absolutely.
their skill level, their experience level, everything is going to make a difference in your flight as well. So, with that experience, when you came into civil aviation, where you are dealing with another pilot, and it's
Yes.
straight and level flight, and you said it's boring. How did you deal with it? What was the mindset shift that happened?
Okay. So I will give you my first sim experience on the citation excellent.
Okay, okay.
Now I am a MiG-21 pilot. Now look at it from that point of view. MiG-21 pilot in the cockpit, there is nobody else to help me. I can't even ask on radio somebody to help me, right? I can't take out a checklist because there's no place to keep a checklist. So every single emergency action, everything is memory.
Right.
There is no read and do. Everything is memory only, right? All are
Mm-hmm.
memory actions. So in my first simulator, everything is done. So I'm sitting there and there's a Romanian co-pilot with me. So the instructor is
Mm-hmm.
behind, and we started doing so just after takeoff. The first simulator was okay, the first takeoff and all. And then he says,
Just
let's
one
do a
question, sir. Just
yeah,
one question. Since you said Romanian pilot, I'm sorry to interject. Do you have kind of a rendezvous with the Romanian pilot who is going to fly with you to have a kind of understanding because the human element does matter a lot, sir. I'm
so I
sorry,
will tell
just
you,
wanted to ask you.
no, no, not only then, even today, and I'm so sure sir will bear me out. When we meet at a briefing before the flight, we introduce each other. We ask some questions about each other because with experience, and he will bear me out especially as an instructor, the way that guy walks to take his papers gives you an indication.
Absolutely.
The body
So you
Absolutely.
language.
get to know exactly how he walks with you to the cockpit or how he enters the cockpit tells you I need to be okay or I am comfortable, right? So
Correct.
you always meet the other person, even if I go for a simulated check ride today, right? I will call up the co-pilot, okay, we are doing this tomorrow. I may have never met him even in the same company, but I will
Hmm.
tell him, okay, what's your experience? What do you do? Okay, we'll do this. We'll look into this. Okay, this is what is our plan. We will always discuss. Because if you don't, you will never be able to perform because you'll not be able to understand each other.
So allow me to ask you, coming to the question what Captain Rohit Saab has asked, like we have a passage planning, we call it passage planning. You also must be having flight planning or flight
Yes,
scheduling.
Absolutely.
yes, absolutely.
So,
Yes,
so
yes.
you must be discussing like what you talked about the gentleman, your Romanian pilot or whatever it is. So basically, when you talk about him to him and you discuss with him, that's where you try to gauge that where you may have to perhaps be there or fill in the gaps.
Yes, so that obviously that comes with experience. But now imagine I am a MiG-21 pilot who's come into civil aviation the first simulator. So this is the first was okay, first 15 because I was just getting the hang of the aircraft. And then he said, okay, let's do some other things. So I don't know, maybe he felt that I was able to handle the simulator. So we got airborne. As we got airborne, after some time, he simulated a fire.
Mhm.
That MiG-21 pilot came into being. Before the moment that fire bell came on, I cancelled engine, undercarriage of flaps, did everything and started doing everything on my own. So he froze the sim. He said,
You
sir,
did discuss this in your last interview. I remember, Captain
exactly.
Winko
So
sir.
he said, Abby, first, there is another pilot. He needs to earn his pay. And secondly, there is a checklist. It tells you what to do. So the first question I asked him is there anything I missed out? He says, no, that I'm impressed that there is not a single thing that you missed out, right? But that's not how we do it. I said, but the aim is to make it safe. You said safe, legal, economical. He said, you're safe, but not legal. And I could understand that. It took me 3 simulator sessions to control my urge. Like the moment you got airborne, if it didn't say positive rate, that means the aircraft is climbing. I would say positive rate, gear up. And you would say, let's go back again. Wait for him to say, but I said, he's not saying. He says, then you check with him, but don't raise the gear. That was the big challenge. And believe you me, it was tough because here, everything I'm doing, navigation also. No, I used
True.
to, in the MiG-21, we held the map like this and the throttle like this
Ah,
because there was no place,
correct.
right? The next challenge was when I came back to flying, and the first flight I flew with the captain, I was flying as a co pilot. And I told him, I cannot believe that I'm flying without a map in my hand. This was a citation XLS where he had planned it on the FMS.
So
He
it
said,
Exactly.
but
means
that's
it
how it
was
is. And
basically in your Air Force one-man show. Plus, did the speed also matter? Because if I'm not mistaken, sir, please correct me, Winko Saab and Captain Rohit Saab, because you fly at Mach 2, approximately 1.8 or Mach 2. But when you're flying the aviation aircraft, it goes up to 950, 60, or 70 odd
Yes.
kilometers per hour, if I'm not mistaken. So, did the speed matter to you along with your all calculation, Winko Saab? Captain Rohit, please do fill me in, and Captain Winko Saab.
okay, so the speeds. So the only difference is, yes, the takeoff landing speeds are very high. Like, for example, the MiG-21, the takeoff landing speeds are higher than that of a space shuttle. So the
Okay.
takeoff speed
Mhm.
is about
How much?
320
How
to
much is that? Just for my
yeah.
knowledge, sir.
So
How?
320 to 360 kilometers per hour based on the configuration, and landing could be as much as 380 kilometers per hour.
Wow,
That
that
is the
is
Okay.
major
where.
difference.
So as far as aviation is concerned, or as an airplane is concerned, where you have to
Captain
put
Rohit,
the
what's
airplane.
your sorry, Captain Rohit, what's your landing speed of your civil aircraft with respect to
So
380 kilometers?
we land at around 130 to 140 knots, which is
Oh,
approximately
almost three
200,
times,
that's
200,
approximately,
220.
almost.
200, 220. So
Okay, okay.
as far as
Please go ahead.
an aircraft is concerned, when he talks about 300, 350 kilometers per hour, we have to understand there's just one strip of land. It's not like the whole sky is available to you. You have to
Exactly.
do everything in that small strip of land. So that's really very high speed. You had to
Yeah.
put an airplane from the air onto the ground, and you had to stop that airplane as well. Otherwise, it's a catastrophe if you cannot stop at that strip of land. So that's really very high speed. And
Yeah. So that is,
yeah, sorry.
sorry,
So
please, please. Sorry.
so when an a manufacturer sells an airplane, that's one of the selling points. You know, we are so good that our landing speeds are very low, and approach speed is very low. They're actually one of the selling points. You know, in a commercial airline. So yeah, please continue.
And the
So
selling
just to
point more so because what it helps is you require a shorter landing strip So you can land at more number of places because everywhere you will not get a 3 kilometer runway. So
Exactly.
that was one, the landing and takeoff speeds. But otherwise, the cruise speed of modern airliners is as fast as the normal operational speeds of a fighter, which is about 800 to 900. Yes, when we go to 1.1, 1 mile to bar, that's only tactical speeds, but for a very short duration. We don't do normal flights at that speed. So normal flights are between say 840, 900, 960 kilometers per hour. Modern airliners, yes, like the 787, 0.87, 0.89 mark, that's the same. So about 90% of the speed of sound, they fly at cruise.
Being inquisitive from a layman's perspective, Vinko Saab and Captain Rohit Saab, what do you use for your braking? I mean, say in my case, I use stern propulsion or stern thrust to stop the ship. In your case, how do you basically you apply brakes or what is it like? I would like
So
to
I
know
will
from a layman's perspective.
Yes,
I will
yes.
request sir to answer. When he finishes, I will just add one more item.
Go ahead, Rohit Saab. Since you're a trainer, Rohit Saab, since you're a trainer,
So,
please, we would like to know more about it.
of course, like any vehicle, it's got its brakes. That is the normal braking that is available in with the wheels. Other than that, we have aerodynamic braking, right? That is
When you say
on.
aerodynamic brake, would you like to be a little bit more precise, Captain Rohit
Yes.
Saab?
So when you talked about hydrodynamics, aerodynamics, it's the airplane flies because of its wings, right? So what you have to do is when you touch down, what there are some surfaces on the wing, on top of the wing, which come out, which breaks the flow of wind of the wind.
Like
So that's
Bernoulli's theorem, if I'm not mistaken,
that's what we
perhaps.
use, absolutely.
Yes,
In
yes,
Bernoulli's theory is there in
exactly.
hydrodynamics, in aerodynamics, all of them.
Correct,
It
correct,
comes
correct.
from
I
Bernoulli's
fully
theory.
agree, fully agree, fully agree
So
with you.
when you flew as a passenger, you must have seen some surfaces that extend on top of the wings, right? That is what spoilers are or speed brakes are. So that's what reduces and allows us to slow down. That is one thing. There are certain extensions on the wings which we do not use in flight, in cruise. But when we come down to close to landing or takeoff, there are certain extensions they call flaps and slats. The front portion of the wing and the aft portion of the wing, which extend, which allows us, what basically it does is it extends the surface of the wing, so which allows us to slow down to a much manageable speed for landing and takeoff. Then there is the engine itself. In the engine, what it does is instead of producing forward thrust on during landing or after touchdown, not during landing, after touchdown, we use it in a mode which the thrust vector is changed in a direction which is opposite to the flow of the airplane. It is called reverse thrust. So basically, these are the slow stopping procedures or stopping mechanisms that we use. And I'm sure Vinko, we
Yeah.
will
So
add one more, and I would like to
yeah.
know that as well.
Okay. So what he said about reverse thrust, I will try and relate with the movie Titanic. Remember when the iceberg
Okay.
is there, he stops the propellers and then they reverse the propeller to try and
Yes,
decelerate.
sir.
That's what reverse. The concept is that. Okay.
Concept is.
So the additional thing that I have is a tail parachute
Mm.
because of
But
the
I'll tell
high
you what,
landing
I'll tell
speed.
you, no, no, I would like to add on something. We have a limitation. I mean, so it's not like when I'm on full sea speed. Of course, in case of any emergency or force majeure,
Correct.
I can put the engines on, reverse or full thrust astern. But end of the day, it may conk off the engine because of the drag.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, okay, emergency contingency is different. But in
Yeah.
our case, we normally wait up to the head speed to come to drop down to say approximately 5 odd knots before I give the stern thrust. So we have their limitation. We cannot immediately deploy the stern thrust when we are at full sea speed. In case of emergency, everything is acceptable, but 90% of times it will bugger up the engine, the main engine,
Mm.
Okay.
because of
So
the drag, because of the displacement of the vessel, the size of the vessel, and the hydrodynamics thing. It may happen. There have been cases where on full head sea speed, you have put a crash astern. We call it crash astern. What has happened? The vessels have even lost their propeller.
Mhm.
So it's not very lucrative, but then of course emergency is emergency. Please continue, Captain Rohit,
Yeah,
sir.
so good you gave this, because now I will draw on both your answers and add on. So the additional thing that fighters have is what is called as a tail parachute, right? Now for two
Yes,
reasons,
yes,
like you said,
I've seen
yeah,
on Su-30
correct.
MK and all that, the tail
So
parachute
every
basically.
fighter, yeah.
Agreed,
So
agreed,
every
agreed.
fighter
Yes,
aircraft will have a tail parachute, primarily because of the
yes.
higher speeds of landing, right? So you have
Mhm.
to decelerate faster.
So
Like you said, you have a
you produce basically a drag to pull the
To
aircraft
pull the
back.
airplane
exactly,
down.
yeah.
If I'm not
So there are
mistaken.
so there are limitations to that also. Now, why do I need a tail parachute? Okay, now that is a slightly technical question.
But
Like
that
sir
may
will bear
also have
out.
limitation as far as the speed is
Yes, yes.
concerned. Otherwise, it will
So
blow your parachute.
everything has a limitation. Everything has a limitation. So now I will add on one more thing. If I am landing on a wet runway, there is a sad phenomena called aquaplaning. Now, what is aquaplaning? Even if I land on the runway, there is a maximum speed up to which, if I apply brakes, a film will be created between the aircraft and the surface, and the braking is not effective. And the
Understood,
aircraft
sir.
will continue to roll down. And there's a formula 9
Understood,
into
sir.
under root of tire pressure in PSI, right?
Correct.
9.8, yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
I need to get the aircraft below that speed to use the brakes. Like the difference is in a MiG-21, the brakes are on the hand. That's why I'm doing this, to use the brakes. Okay,
Oh, all right.
right. So the brakes are on the hand. And the difference is if they are pneumatic. So before the flight, it is charged up to 130 kgs per centimeter square. If
Mhm.
you use it too much, when you land back, you will have no brakes.
Wow.
So you could deplete the pressure, then you have to give a call. I'm going to switch off, request a tractor, towing arm, and a transport to take me back because I can't taxi back. And
Taxi back, yeah.
sometimes, if you have not seen the pressure on downwind when you're coming in for landing, and you have not realized you don't brake, the aircraft can go off the runway.
Mhm.
That is why the tail parachute. So the tail parachute is deployed after you launch down. So normally you will find all aircraft fighters when they land, after touchdown, they'll keep the nose wheel up. This is called aerodynamic braking, where the
Hmm.
air pressure causes deceleration. Like for example, in the MiG-21, the tail parachute limit emergency operation is 300. Normal operation was 260. So after landing, nose wheel up, get the speed to 260, tail parachute. Now, when you deploy the tail parachute, the aircraft starts decelerating, nose wheel down. And the moment the tail parachute gets deployed, you have to be very smart to lower the nose wheel. Because of the pulley effect, you could slam the nose wheel. So the nose wheel down, and once you get below aquaplaning speed, now gently apply pressures depending on tire pressure available, pneumatic pressure. Use all the brakes, end of the runway, you stop comfortable. But then the next aircraft can't land till the tractor takes you back. So,
That's
because see,
interesting.
the difference is the Airbus has got, it's a huge aircraft, or the 737. You can have one system, standby system, secondary system. You could have a larger accumulator to put more pneumatic pressure.
Correct.
Between the accumulator is this much. How much pressure, how much air can you put? So those are the
So
challenges of deceleration.
nice.
And
So
yes, one
Captain,
more point. Like you said, we use flaps and slats for landing and not in the air. In the fighters, we use flaps and slats even in the air for combat. So
right.
if I'm fighting against another aircraft and I want to have a shorter radius of turn, I will reduce, because as you turn, the speed will reduce. At a certain
Correct.
stage, I'll deploy slats or flats to do a tighter turn at a lower speed
Wow.
and fly lower.
Nice.
So
That's
even that is involved in the air during combat.
that I'd not thought about that. That can be used in combat as well.
So
Yes,
that's why I
absolutely.
say in fighter flying, the difference is you use every system everywhere. And that is the challenge I always had, because I used to always wonder, if I have to slow down, why can't I select flaps? Incidentally, this is a funny scene. I kept trying to find out why is there a flap limitation of 20,000 feet on every aircraft,
Hmm.
right? And it is only much later that I found out from OEMs when I gone to US for initial. That's because no flaps have been tested about 20,000 feet.
Exactly.
So I never thought, how come every aircraft has got 20,000 feet? And that's when they said, because I went to the Cessna factory. And that's when a pilot said, we never tested beyond that. Whereas for us, we use it even in the air.
Because you're never required to use flaps, and
Exactly.
at
Exactly.
highest altitude we land is what, 10,000 lay. So
Yeah, maybe that's it.
exactly. So when you're descending down, so below 20,000 is what you would use flaps. So there is no reason for us to test it. We're not going to
So you
land anywhere with that.
So when you use lay, I'll give you one more very funny incident. So I got released on the Airbus 320 and we were doing normal line flying. And one day I got planned from Mumbai to Srinagar, right? So one of my ex-Air Force colleagues, he's based in Delhi. So he generally called up. So what, क्या चल रहा है वगैरह? I said nothing. बोलता है कल क्या फ्लाइट है? कल फ्री है? मैंने नहीं, कल मैं श्रीनगर जा रहा हूँ. बोलता है अच्छा आपका श्रीनगर क्लियरेंस हो गया? मैंने क्लियरेंस का तो कुछ पता ही नहीं है. तो ही सर, अरे सर श्रीनगर का स्पेशल क्लियरेंस है. I said यार, but the rostering is planned me.
Hmm.
तो बोलता है सर उनको पता ही नहीं लगा होगा. बोला यार, विदाउट देम नोइंग हाउ कुड दे प्लान मी. तो बोलता है सर चेक कर लो. मैंने हाँ ठीक है, आई चेक. So I called up the first officer. I said, have you flown to Srinagar? He says, no, I thought you have flown, so I'll go with you. I said, okay. So I said, I need to do something because I went through the OMA airfield data. It didn't show any clearance, right? So I said, I'm legal, but since somebody's told me, and in aviation,
Right.
whenever in doubt, clear the doubt. If you keep that
Question.
doubt, you don't know what disaster can take place.
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
spoke to another Air Force guy who was in the same airline. So he told me there's a problem after Bunny Hall to descend with flaps and all that stuff.
Mhm.
I said, "Theek, that's okay. I'll manage." Then I called up the chief pilot. I said, so first I sent him a WhatsApp test. I'm planned for Srinagar, but somebody told me I need a clearance for Srinagar. The moment the message got delivered, I got a call back. Huh, sir, haven't you flown to Srinagar? I said, I have flown to Srinagar maybe 300-400 times. He said, Fir, but in this airline, I said, no, I've flown in a MiG-21, I've flown in a Bison, I've flown in an Embraer, I've flown in an XLS. He said, no, in an Airbus. I said, no. He said, then how are you planned? I said, you tell me. I've got a roster change. Just got a change. He said, thank God you asked me. But these are things which in civil
Exactly.
world took me time to adjust. Yes, even in the Air Force, you had that. But in the Air Force, all you did was you came for the first time when I went to Srinagar, I came, did a low overshoot. That means did the full approach, flared out, went round, and then came and landed. Not in a civil. You need to have clearance in certain airfields. You'll fly either as an observer or with an instructor. He'll check you out and then he'll clear you. So these are things which took me time to adjust. But yes,
True.
I
very
have
interesting because out of these, all these funny incidents. So all my friends keep telling me, there's a lovely book which one of my journalist friends has written called Humor in Uniform. And I gave him a lot of
Hmm.
anecdotes. So he said, why didn't you do something humor in civil aviation?
Can be
I
done.
said,
Can be done.
yeah, but I said, a lot of people get into trouble. And first is within 1 month of the book getting published, I'll get sacked.
no, no, very, 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 very
So,
politely and very legitimately laid down, goes up. Continue, Rohit sir, please go continue.
Captain Puneet, what do you have as distillation processes that you have in the ships? Could you
I would
explain
like to
a
ask,
little bit of
yes, I
technicalities
will
as
ask,
well?
I will answer everything you say, Captain Rohit, Vinko, Abhijit sir. I have one question out of my mind while you guys were
Hmm.
discussing and I was, thinking about it. Do you have something like change in the air density going from one, place to another whilst you're flying?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Massive,
yes,
massive, massive.
definitely.
I'll
Massive,
give,
massive,
I will give you
massive.
an exact idea. So I take
Hmm.
off from, say, Air Force Station near Bikaner, right?
Yes, sir.
Temperature in summers is about 47 degrees centigrade, right? So I get airborne, just about managed to get airborne before the end of the runway. And then I'm
Hmm.
flying to Srinagar. Okay. So, like I said, in aviation, there is one more challenge. So my airspeed indicator has shown me 320 kilometers per hour at takeoff.
Hmm.
And my landing speed is
Is
340
your
at
no?
should be.
Is your airspeed? Allow me to ask you. Is your airspeed is more accurate than the GPS or vice versa?
No, no. So the airspeed has got its errors, but now with modern technology, they are extremely accurate because they've got a GPS input, right?
Is it like
But
Doppler? Is it like Doppler? Do you use Doppler?
No.
Because we use Doppler. Doppler is more accurate in our case once we come into the depth of 15 meters under the keel.
Mhm.
Uh, More than that, the Doppler is not very effective. So we have one is electronic log, which gives us the speed through the water. The other one is a Doppler log, which is more accurate, provided you are within 50 meters. You have a depth under your keel,
correct, sir.
and
Yes.
it gets ground stabilized. Please continue. Please
Mhm.
continue.
So, so we have multiple, like even if I now today's world in the civil airliners, you will get from inertial nav systems, you will get from GPS, you will get from uh, static and pitot sources, and they will all talk to each other and multiple systems and give you the most accurate one. So it's very accurate. But now I'm talking of a MiG-21 which has got only analog instruments, so only static pressure, dynamic pressure. So like I said, plan to land in Srinagar at a speed of 340 kilometers per hour, which is indicated on my gauge. Okay. So when I come in and land and touch down, my indicated speed is saying 340, but my true air speed is showing me 400 kilometers per hour. The true air speed
Because
is
of
the
the
speed of the
push you
aircraft to
have
the air.
from behind, or what is it like? Or the
No.
air density?
So
Air
the true
density.
airspeed is the speed of the aircraft through a parcel of air, whereas indicated
Okay,
airspeed is based on
okay,
the speed which
okay,
is now on the ground. So my
okay.
speed is showing me 400, whereas one needle is showing me 340. And Srinagar, that's why it's a 4
Right,
kilometer
right,
runway because
right.
of the high density. You require longer distance to decelerate. The effectiveness of various braking surfaces reduced. Similarly, at high temperatures at 45, 46, the air density reduces, the effectiveness of the engine reduces because the amount in say 1 kg parcel of air, the actual air is less. So there are a lot of things. If there is higher humidity, more water content, less air parcel. So there are a huge number of varieties. Touchwood in today's world with the modern airliners, all these are catered for. But all my life, I had to actually sit and calculate every time.
Okay, this parcel of air reminds me like how we basically talk about when we are heading into a storm, parcel of the airs, converging and forming into a TRS, we call it tropical revolving
Mhm.
storm, etc.,
Revolving storm.
etc. Yes, sir. Yes, continue, Captain Rohit, sir. It's becoming very interesting, sir. Please continue.
Yes. So my question was to you: what distillation means to you have in ships? Is it different for a small ship, or for a VLCC, and as compared to another ship?
I'll explain you. On like how Vinko and you guys have explained, Captain Rohit and Captain Vinko Aviation. Or a smaller ship has a smaller water plane area,
Mhm.
and likewise a lesser draft. Plus, we have, a bow thruster on a smaller ship. Like smaller ship, when I say up to 183 meters length, LOA we call length overall.
Mhm.
So when we call about bow thruster, it's like another propeller which gives you a transverse thrust to turn the ship to port, starboard, etc.
Okay.
But yes, when we talk about advisable to for any ship
Mhm.
because of the hydrodynamical effect that in case of any emergency, yes, you can use the full thrust or crash astern, what we call double ring astern at any point in time, but 90% of time it will bugger up your engine, maybe put the engine on fire or something or the other. But under the normal circumstances, what we do that in case suppose I'm approaching an anchorage, I need to test my engines prior to
Mhm.
approaching the anchorage. I would make sure that my speed over ground, that is the speed ahead, as per the GPS, has come to 5 knots or probably below that. That's when I try the stern thrust so that the drag is minimum.
Mhm.
Uh, that is what it is. But all this while, whenever I have our main critical ops are like docking the ship, a big ship like what I have been driving in past, or putting them to stop, especially for anchorage. I used to basically equalize the forces.
Mm-hmm.
One is the current that I'm experiencing from the sea state, and the windage area. Higher the windage area, difficult to control the vessel, which you experience on bigger ships like VLCC, especially when they are in ballast and not laden. Of course, when they are laden, I'm talking about a bigger ship like VLCC. Uh, to stop a VLCC when she's doing 2.5 knots headway, I may
Mm-hmm.
need half a head. You need 50% of the thrust astern, which is very unusual. It is all because of the mass into acceleration or the displacement what she has got. But a similar big vessel which is in ballast, not loaded or not laden, if the wind is favorable, light winds, state Beaufort force up to 3 or 4. 3 is okay, 4 maybe a little more, uh,
Mm-hmm.
which would not affect my vessel's windage area. I would be able to stop her peacefully within 2 knots up to slow ahead maximum. However, taking this lesson, I had always made this point because at one point in time when I was approaching anchorage with a laden VLCC, and I found when I gave the stern thrust, I found my engine failure.
Okay.
And at that point in time, I had option either to drop the hook. Hook means anchor.
Anchor.
But when you are at a speed of 3 knots plus, there is a danger that you may lose your anchor and anchor chain. So since then, I had learned the lesson that I used to equalize the force, because when we anchored the vessel, we always stem the tide. If the tide is coming this way, let's say I'm heading this way, this is northwesterly. So the current is the direction in which it sets. So basically southeasterly. So I'm stemming onto the current and equalizing the forces. Maybe the current is 2 knots or 3 knots, and I'm at, say, about 5 knots. So I try to maneuver the vessel in such a manner that I head on to the
Mm-hmm.
tide or the current, and
Correct.
it automatically puts a brake on me. And when I'm within zero point 0.2 knots, my speed, I drop my hook, and many a times my chief engineer has asked me, Captain Sub, you've not given me the stern thrust. Have we anchored? I used to say yes, because I used to take that, my stern thrust is my reserve, which I would
Uh,
use it in case of any emergency. That's what I've
right.
been following.
What's
So
interesting, sir, I will be very honest with
exactly.
you. I, I have been on ships and I have gone because obviously, as part of the armed forces, right from academy days, we used to set sail, go for 2 day exercise, 3 day exercises. It's not easy. Uh,
Yes.
Forget just trying to navigate and
It's
staying there.
like in my case and you all guys' case, the speed matters or the time is very fast. In my
Also, more than the
case,
speed.
no, no. In my case, the I have the time, but I have a problem how to handle such a big, thing
The
which
size of the ship there.
Momentum,
size
sir.
of the
The
ship,
momentum. The
momentum.
The
momentum itself.
momentum.
So basically, it's mass into velocity. So that's momentum. So basically, what I do, I had always, because once I had learned this, that I'd given stern thrust, and I found that okay, it's not kicking. I called up the chief engineer. He said, "Sorry, Captain, the one of the piston is stuck."
Oh,
So I said, "Okay," or maybe I've experienced a scavenge fire, which is very no, I'm
Absolutely.
not saying normal, which happens quite often. Scavenge fire means the chief engineer has to, put the steam into the that particular chamber to extinguish the fire. Lots of things happen, and especially when you go to place like US, where they use a fuel of like diesel. I was talking to Captain Rohit LSMGO when he asked me for the Baltimore. I will talk about it in case you wish to. So what happens? It's a less viscous fuel, and the flash point of the fuel is pretty high. At high temperature, when we talk about the engine, and same thing in your engines also, the temperatures are quite high. With the air temperature 30, 35, I mean to say, if it's being ambient, the engine temperature may shoot up to 60, 70, maybe 80. So at that point in time, if I give a stern kick, sudden thrust, it certainly would affect my engine. So
Mhm.
I always had been, practicing to preserve my engine as my last resort.
Right, right. So one more technical question that I would like to ask you. You said the speed today is measured through the GPS. So what was it before GPS? How did you do it? How did you
What I'll
measure?
tell you, what I'll tell you, coming from the old school of thoughts, spending about 45 years out at sea, we did not have GPS when I joined sea, honestly speaking.
Mm-hmm.
We used to take sextants and shoot stars and suns to
Exactly.
calculate our positions through the Marx and Hillary method, or what is that, long by cron, what is in the navigation, and
Mm-hmm.
other methods, or running fix, what we have. To stop the ship, the hydrodynamical things work. You see, I'm not sure about. I will ask you after I answer this question. The We have something known as pivot axis or pivot point, which is approximately one third of the length of the vessel from the bow. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, if my vessel is 330 meters, 1 by 3 is it's a hypothetical point, but it works on the ship from the hydrodynamical point of view. So if I've given a thrust ahead, the pivot point from stop position when it comes to midships. Let me rephrase it correctly. Let's say when the vessel is stopped, the pivot point is almost at the center of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Center of the ship, when I talk about, there is something known as center of flotation of the ship. As per the draft, what the vessel is drawing, and the depth of the water. So there's an intersection which I may have to perhaps draw, but I hope you guys are also into
Yes,
the
and
same
can
thing.
imagine. Yes.
So it comes almost at the center of the ship, not exactly at center, but where the intersection of the underwater volume of the displacement and the water plane of the vessel intersects approximately.
Mm-hmm.
So, but when I give the thrust ahead, it automatically starts shifting ahead, which is approximately one third of the length from the bow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I'm giving the stern thrust, the same pivot axis would shift from one third of the length from the bow to one third of the length from the stern, which is approximately, if you guys must have seen the ship, where the accommodation is, where the bridge is,
Mm-hmm.
or you guys call cockpit, we call it bridge.
Correct.
So in good old days, which still works, because I honestly speaking, coming from old school of thoughts, I never used to rely upon the GPS. When you give the stern kick, the moment you find the wake of water has come up to the accommodation, that is on the bridge, port or starboard, whichever side you're standing, that means the vessel has almost stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And I've checked it not once, umpteen number of times. I should tell my second mate, third mate, or first mate, okay, boss, you stay on the GPS, give this thrust as I'm saying, and I used to watch the wake of the water when I'm giving the stern thrust. Because the vessel is drawing aft, the wake of the water will come up to my accommodation or the cockpit, what you guys call, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when I know, okay, she stopped. And that's when my
Wow.
third mate or my mate will say, okay, Captain, the vessel has stopped. I say, okay, stop the engines.
Wow.
No, it is sometimes
Very
no.
interesting.
Every time I think of this, so many things about the sea. Of course, one is experience of being on board a ship, but other is things like no. I remember momentum. I remember Titanic again. Why aren't they turning? They're trying
No, no,
everything, but done
Venko
everything,
Saab,
but the ship is not turning
like
because it
in
takes
your
time.
case, it'll take you maybe 1 minute 30 seconds to take a U-turn.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
my case, it may take me 20 minutes, 15 minutes, subject to the maneuverability of the
Exactly.
vessel. And my turning circle would be subject to the vessel's characteristics, length, overall, and the condition in which it is in. She is in, be it ballast or laden. Laden,
Mm-hmm.
of course, it will take bigger circle, and more the speed, bigger the turning circle. And of course, effect of windage area and the
Yeah,
current,
so the same.
they do affect. They do affect.
It's interesting when you get to know, the kind of technicalities that are involved in. Uh, it's when you look at the sheer size of the ship and the way it is maneuvered. It's amazing with the kind of things that you have to do, that you are saying, and then the old school methods. It's really amazing. It's
I'll
hats
tell
off.
you because Captain Vinko, Abhijit Saab, and Captain Rohit Saab, we were taught one thing at the college, nautical college, when we graduated, that eyes are the best radars what you have in case
Oh,
if you
yes.
don't have restricted visibility.
Mhm.
And brain is the best computer you have because this brain has made the same computer on which we are talking about. You must never undermine the same thing because today in my own industry, I mean, say we have the same electronic charts navigation system. We call it EGDIS. You have the same thing. My second mate, third mate, it has happened umpteen number of times that, we have rules of road, or you must be having the collision avoidance rules. We call it rules of
Yes.
road or coal regs. Coal
Yes.
regs, we call it. White rule number 5, it states that every vessel shall at all time maintain a proper lookout by sight, hearing, as well as by all available means in order to avoid a risk of collision, etc., etc. But when you look at with due respect and without prejudice, my junior officers, they can easily see a vessel inside, maybe head on, but they want to focus either on
Yeah, yeah.
radar or on
True.
egg disc. Whereas I can see the red and green lights at night or the aspect of the vessel and take the action as it's deemed necessary. So what I've been trying to teach my, fellow mariners that listen, this information, what you're looking at radar or EGDIS is coming few milliseconds later. This is the best radar in case you don't have a restricted visibility. You can see what is happening. This is the live picture, but unfortunately, it does not. It does
I
not
will tell
work.
you, I will tell you what you're saying is exactly applicable also in aviation. There is a
Absolutely.
beautiful video online. It is titled Child of the Magenta.
Children
You
I
of the
will write
must
down.
magenta.
No, no.
go
What
through
is
it.
the? No, what is
It's
the?
called Child of the Magenta.
Children of the magenta.
Okay. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's an amazing video. Of course, it is related to aviation, but it will come back and you will be able to draw lessons. What does it mean is in the aviation, in modern civil aviation, everything that is magenta is controlled by the computer, right? Today, what has happened is that people know something is going wrong, but they will only look at the magenta, but least forgetting that magenta is going to give you what you have fed in. So if you're fed in
Yes.
something wrong, it's going to
Yes.
give you something wrong.
Yes.
That
Yes. Yes.
video, I mean, I will not try and prejudice you, but please go through it. I can assure you, even for sea navigation, it will give you some beautiful lessons to teach the youngsters. It's amazing. And it's by an
Sir,
extremely qualified pilot.
in our case, it's a normal standard instructions from the master. When I say as a captain or from the company, that the visual or the lookout shall never be undermined. But unfortunately, it has been happening, and that is the reason. I have navigated online, sitting on this particular computer, navigated the ships online, apprising the masters. Once I have a full video thing, because now we have, all the state-of-the-art equipment on board as well, and I had to correct their passage plan or route plan, what
Hmm.
you guys call it. and I had to correct that, and I had to sit almost 12 hours many a times. Especially, lots of fiascos are taking place in places like Suez Canal. We have lots of perils out at sea, starting from South China Sea, coming to Singapore Straits, which is one of the busiest water in the world, then coming to south of Andaman, and then going to Arabian, and then going to Geo, Gulf of Aden. And what we normally do is that we pick up the armed guards at Gaul, uh, south of Sri Lanka. And then once we enter the Gulf of Aden, we have armed guards who happen to be mercenaries, and they have all the equipment, munitions, etc., etc. But today, with this Houthi things going on, it has become terrible. That one was Gulf of Aden because it's a bottleneck area. Once you pass, there used to be Somalian pirate area. It happened with me in 2006 or 7, if I remember it correctly. I was sailing with my family on board, and at that point in time, this piracy had just started or had begun. And I'm not sure what they fired at me. I I thought maybe RPG or what, I don't know. Vinko will correct me. And I had to take special maneuvers to dodge the vessel. And I told my chief engineer, give me bloody full thrust. And normally we go at almost 80, 85 of MCR, that is the main engine maximum revolution.
Mm-hmm.
I had asked him to give me 95. He said, Captain साहब मरवाओगे. मैंने कहा साले मर तो रहे हैं, इससे अच्छा कि मिसाइल या रॉकेट शूट करे, हम escape करें. I had to take evasive maneuvers, and GOA and all that I had crossed umpteen number of times. But today, what we see or hear in the news or in my maritime fraternity, lots of things are happening even in the Red Sea.
Hmm.
So you will have similar things even in aviation. So one of the most dangerous things that's happening in today's aviation, civil aviation, is called GPS spoofing.
Spooking,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So what is happening is your aircraft system is telling you you're going straight on
Sir,
track.
I would like to ask you one question, because my another neighbor, he's also a pilot from same company where Captain Rohit comes. I'd asked him a lot of time this question. You must be using the DGPS with a aero radio beacon, yes or no?
Yes, DGPS is basically ground station.
I know. And you see, GPS is because the DMA, Defense Mapping Agency of US, which has
They have
launched the
correct.
GPS constellation, but they have fed in the fixed error so no enemy country can spook it.
Absolutely.
However, once you come within 300 to 400 nautical miles off the coast, your DGPS equipment homes on to, because it has a pre-fed beacon in that, and it locks onto the beacon, and the beacon sends a corrective signal because the beacon notes its position like how we stand on our feet.
Absolutely.
So the same beacon receives the signal from the same GPS 4 or 5 satellites. They're saying that okay, this is the position, but the beacon says no, it's not my position. My actual position, which has been pre-fed, is this. So it automatically corrects with the computer. And once the vessel, in my case, the ship comes within 300 or 400 nautical miles off the coast, it locks onto it, and that beacon sets a corrective signal. So you must be having the same modus operandi, I believe
So
so.
there are two factors to this. One is what you're saying is right. Okay, the ground station sends the corrective signal to give the correct input.
Correct. The beacon is
Earlier,
what you have.
GPS was not the approved aid for navigation, primarily because, like you said, complete US control. So they had
Yes.
two codes called the P code and the S code, right?
Okay.
And they could change it as they wanted. It is only when the US president, if I'm not wrong, it is Ronald Reagan, who signed an executive order along with ICAO saying that
Okay. Yes. 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 I'm aware of
yeah,
it. Yes, sir.
we will
Yes, sir.
not reduce this below a certain value. And that is
Yes.
how today area navigation, etc., has come about, because they are guaranteeing that.
Correct.
GPS
Correct.
spoofing is, again, so I was in an electronic warfare squadron where we would jam all kinds of equipment. I can jam a GPS receiver L-band, using an L-band
Okay.
jammer, because the GPS has got two uplink and downlink, 1575
Correct. Correct.
megahertz. So I
Correct.
could
Correct.
jam the receiver by sending garbage on that. So that's one.
Hmm.
Spoofing, at least when I jam it, your receiver will show nothing. At least you will be warned. Spoofing is more dangerous. What they will do is your information as per your instrumentation will show that you are on track. But after about
Hmm.
30 minutes, you realize you're 20, 30 miles off track.
Okay.
That is what is dangerous. And it
No, we
is
experience
extremely.
we experience the same thing. We experience the same thing. I'll tell you. I used to go regularly to Black Sea. Now there is a conflict between GPS and GLONASS.
Correct.
GLONASS being Russian. And to worst case scenario, once I crossed the Istanbul Straits, the Straits of Istanbul, going to Black Sea, I lost my gyro. I lost my gyro. Uh, I think I was 20 odd nautical miles north of the Istanbul Straits once I dropped the pilot. And there is a magnetic anomaly. So because my second line of defense was, after I lost my gyro, was to fall back on the magnetic compass. But the magnetic anomaly over there, as per we have EGC, Enhanced Group Calling Messages, and SATC messages, was around 26 odd degrees. So if I think I'm heading 000, actually I'm heading 026. So at that point in time, I had loads of problem, and finally I had to take the vessel to Burgas in Bulgaria to get my gyro repaired. So lots of things are there when you talk about the GPS spoofing and interference. I've experienced same thing, similar thing. But
Yeah.
when you
And
go
the other
close to
risk
the
is also all these rebels now who have got amazing weapons. So you could be shot down, like it happened in the case of the Malaysian airliner close to Russia, where the rebels shot down an airliner. So today, when you're
correct,
flying, if
correct,
there's a war over Israel, there is a complete airspace closure. So you have to take a longer route. Because of the Russia-Ukraine war, there are airliners which can't fly direct; they have to take a stopover. So these rules and restrictions keep coming up. So it's the same thing. Like you have a problem in the Gulf of Aden, or you have in maybe Malacca Straits. Tomorrow in the South China Sea, there is a little bit of conflict between, say, Thailand and China, and you'll have to deviate off track. So it's so wonderful, no, that there is so much of commonality between sea
Absolutely.
and the air. Even like you say, aerodynamics, hydrodynamics, laws of the sea, laws of the air, density, air pressure is the same thing. It's amazing. And
in our case also, when I asked say you all gentlemen a humble question that the air density matters, in my case also the water density matters, because if I go from higher to lower density, because the sea water density is 1.025 globally, it may vary, especially in place like Gulf of Aden where it goes up, but on an average, it's 1.025 seawater density. When you go from seawater to brackish water or fresh water, we experience Venturi effect.
yes,
We
yes.
do experience Venturi effect, especially when we go between the locks. There's a suction effect. There's a Venturi effect, and of course, based upon the hydrodynamics. And when like what you talk about, the air wings, what Vinko was describing, when a bigger vessel is overtaking a smaller vessel or vice versa, because of the displacement, there's certain amount of lateral suction, by virtue of which the smaller vessel gets withdrawn towards the bigger vessel. And that is where we have been having lots of collision. And wider rules of road, a coal reg, we call rule number 13, and overtaking situations, especially in narrow channels and fairway. That's where lots of fiascos have been taking place
So
now,
it's the
and
same
even
thing.
in past.
It's the
We
same thing
have
in the air.
Yeah.
similar
No,
thing
I
called
could
as
understand.
wake
I could understand
turbulence.
when you guys were describing the same thing. I could understand.
No,
I
no,
could
this is about wake
perhaps agree.
turbulence. Like you said, suction, exactly the same thing is called wake turbulence.
So, Vinko Saab and Rohit Saab, when I do the STS operation, we call it ship-to-ship operations,
Mhm.
I take the advantage of the same hydrodynamics. There's a mother vessel which is bigger, which is laden, has a higher displacement. There's a daughter vessel, I'm bringing her alongside, and we call it one is running in moor, that both the vessels are moving. Other is static maneuver, that is when the mother vessel is anchored on a port side anchor. So in running mode, what I do, I take the same advantage of bringing the daughter vessel within the hydrodynamical effect of the mother vessel. So I
Mhm.
don't need a tug to push me. I get automatically drawn towards her.
Towards
Of
her.
course, there are
Wow.
fenders and all that to all those things are there. So I use that same hydrodynamical interaction in my favor whenever it's required.
Wow. Nice. That is interesting. That is. Yeah.
Because to because to bring two big vessels together, there is a very high risk of collision as well. So basically,
Yes.
when we tie up we are within approximately 2 or 3 meters of each other because the fendering is there, maximum 2 meters. But when you are casting off, when you casting, that's when the hydrodynamical interaction, it forms a magnet between two vessels.
Hmm.
To break that magnet because you see, uh, let me explain with my hand. This VLCC big vessel, she is at this draft.
Hmm.
I have brought another ship which is at a lesser draft, so her freeboard is high. But after the transshipment has taken place, she has gone down and VLCC has come up.
Hmm.
So this difference is there. Now there is an intersection somewhere down the line on the hydrodynamical interaction, which unites the ship like a magnet.
Hmm.
To break that magnet is something what I have been explaining or teaching my fellow mariners from the practical aspects of navigation and ship handling.
Wow. That's a very, very interesting concept that you
Extremely.
have. I think you should tell us more about this sometimes.
Certainly, certainly, I do because I use just to since you guys are we are on same page. I use my stern thrust. I basically what I do on a bigger ship because the propeller is bigger.
Hmm.
I use her stern thrust to fill the water because when I get the stern thrust, the water gets filled up between these two ships
Hmm.
to try to break the vacuum. And I am not sure about you from your aircraft point of view. We call it right hand screw. Right hand screw when the propeller is going clockwise.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
On a right on a right hand screw, the vessel will can to port on a ahead motion. She'll can to starboard on a stern thrust. So what I do, I try to take the advantage of transverse thrust, what we call. So what I do, I put the bigger ship as a mooring master, mooring a bigger ship on a stern thrust to fill the water between the ships. And this that is after the transshipment is completed, the hoses are disconnected, and the smaller ship, I give this thrust ahead at the same time, calling the bigger ship to maintain the speed around 3 to 4 odd knots, so that she should not can to her starboard because if she cans to her starboard, I
Hmm.
may have a collision.
Correct.
So वो सब होता है कि उसके हिसाब से थोड़ा बहुत करना होता है.
Wow. It's really interesting.
Gentlemen, it has
Good.
been Venko Saab, Captain Rohit Saab. I think shall we meet again if it is okay with you, Venko Saab and
Yeah, yeah,
Rohit Saab,
sure. Anytime.
Absolutely.
to discuss
Absolutely.
Anytime.
more and more modalities?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Anytime.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you so much.
And that's
Lovely.
how we conclude this session with Vinko Abhijit Kokle, sir, and Captain Rohit Kumar Saab.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Jai
you.
Hind, Jai
Thank
Bharat,
you. Jai Hind.
Vande Mataram.
Jai Hind,
Thank
Jai
you.
Bharat. Thank you. Thanks. Thank
Good
you.
night, sir.
Good night.